All right. Welcome, Cheeseheads, to the Cheese Room YouTube show. Today we've got a we've got a great panel because it is the Americans taking over the show, just like we are the Premier League. I am your host, Jack Hoyle, here in North Carolina, back from a 3-week European holiday that my son on the bottom here joined us for. Isaiah is with us, a newly minted graduate of the sports journalism program of Solent University in Southampton. And with us is James the Drinker, who is ever popular and with us again. How you doing, James?
I'm good. I mean, a normal day. Weather was terrible today, but it's all right. I've got something to drink. Got the Spurs to talk about happy days. I will say I'm very disappointed to hear that I'm sharing a room with someone who lived in Southampton. That's disappointing, but pleasure to be here as ever.
Yeah, Isaiah, I'm sure you got a couple comments on Southampton now that you're no longer a resident there.
Yeah. But let's be civil. It was I met some really nice people there. They just weren't from Southampton.
Yeah, it is true. He has made some tremendously solid friends. I've met them and liked them very much. So that's good. That was a very positive thing. Plus, I think Solent's a pretty good place to work
great.
on sports journalism. So, but yeah, I as I left Southampton about a little over 2 weeks ago on the train back to London, I was like, I was pretty confident that was the last time I'd be in Southampton, unless it was to watch Spurs play. So. All right. Well, we have lots to talk about. I'm glad that I'm back on the show. I enjoyed my tour around the continent, but I'm glad to hear, and we're getting some exciting action. Of course, everyone wants to talk about center backs, and fortunately, we have a lot to talk about today, in addition to other things. So we've got some news coming out, however reliable it may or may not be, that we may be close to getting someone in, because our friend Fabrizio has put this up today, that we are getting close to finally Mickey. Although I still think he's misspelling the name there. I think the first V is still small, not a capital. But we'll forgive Fabrizio for that. That we're bringing in Mickey Van de Ven, potentially. James, we've talked about this before. What are your thoughts? I haven't seen any firm price yet. I don't know if you've seen anything in terms of a fee and what your thoughts are here.
I haven't seen anything in regards to a fee. This is promising news. It's all gone a bit quiet on the centre back front in recent weeks after it seemed like, one was nearly through the door, nothing's happened. Okay. Yeah, as Kerry said, this was said about 5 weeks ago that we were very close. I'm hoping it is the case that we are actually getting close, and maybe Levy's shifted on his position of probably a couple million, isn't it? But yeah, I think he's a very good centre back, and I think we just need to sign a centre back to lift the mood a bit, because I think everyone's a bit down in the dumps about it. So it's good news, at least.
Yeah, there's no question that it is good news if this is true. But I do feel a little bit hesitant. Usually, if when I see things like this from Fabrizio, I'm ready to declare victory. But I think we've been burned, right, Isaiah?
Yeah, I mean, it was it feels like a month ago now, that he said Van de Ven was in London for medical and was going to be joining us on the tour of Asia, and of course, that turned out to not to be true. And obviously, he can't he can't get it right every time, but that's a pretty solid statement for him to make. He must have been really confident in that, and to have it not pan out makes you kind of think, well, okay, he says personal terms are agreed. He says they're close, but I mean, who's his source of information? Because last time it was so far wide of the mark.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go with the idea that this has clearly been a target from early in the window. There's no question that this is one of the consistent names that the club has been linked with. So let's talk a little bit about the strengths and weaknesses. James, do you have some thoughts on this? I mean, he doesn't have a huge long playing career, but do you have some thoughts on how you feel he's going to fit into the system and what he brings to the table and what maybe still are his weaknesses?
Mickey, from my knowledge, has predominantly played on the left side of a back three for Wolfsburg. So my worry a little bit is he solid enough to play in a back four? He's very quick, very strong, very tall. His aerial numbers aren't overwhelmingly dominant. I don't think he's seen to be overwhelmingly dominant, but it certainly does give us a help. And ultimately, I think anyone's better than Davinson Sanchez or Eric Dyer. Obviously in an Ange system, in a centre back, three things: you need to be good at defending, obviously. You need to be quick. You need to be good with the ball at your feet. You need to be quick enough to play a high line, right? It'd be no good playing. I don't know. I can't think of someone slow. But you need to be good on the ball and comfortable playing a high line. And he is those things. My worry isn't on those aspects. Is he a good enough defender?
Yeah. Isaiah, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I haven't seen him play a lot, but comparing his defensive stats, duels won, and as you mentioned, James, the aerial stats aren't great for someone of his size. I mean, being 6'4", 6'5", being that tall and having those aerial numbers, you hope you can kind of coach that in. But some of the weaknesses of his seem to be really similar to some of Eric Dyer's weaknesses, which is concerning to any Spurs fan, I think. He just his duels won, his tackle success rate are limited, and the one of the main things he has over Eric Dyer, besides being young and having room to grow, is that he has the recovery pace. So if he misses a tackle, if he goes into the wrong challenge, loses a duel, he can get back and make you face him again, which obviously is not something in Eric Dyer's wheelhouse. I do think he's a promising player, but I just kind of want someone a little bit more ready-made, someone a little bit more ready to go right next to Romero into this system and start playing well within the first couple of months of the season, as opposed to somebody who we might start to see, early signs of progress towards the end of the season.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I'll agree with that. That's my concern, is that he is fairly untested, and if he doesn't work out, and this is the only center back you bring in, obviously we're maybe close to signing some 18-year-old kid, but that's clearly, no matter how good he might be, he's one for the future. So you're if he doesn't work out, you're instantly looking at, okay, do I put in Eric Dyer? Do I put in Ben Davies? Because it looks like we've got. I saw some news come out that Longley, not that I want Longley in the club as your starting left center back, but he's being linked with a move to Saudi Arabia. It looks like, right? So, which is fine. I don't care. But the reality is, if he does not work out, I agree with you, Isaiah. It's a problem, because now you've basically starting potentially Eric Dyer or Ben Davies at left center back, and that's not a recipe for success at all. So yeah, I agree with that. I think that's. And then I saw some. I've now seen some. I don't know if anyone in the who are watching has seen any rumors about the fee. Owen, the caller, put in our group chat something about 50 million euros, which seems a extraordinarily high fee for this sort of player with this limited experience in the top leagues in Europe. I don't know if anyone else has seen that, but that was quoted in our chat group, and I hope that's not the correct number, or it's a fee that we're going to pay over 8 years, because that's just a really high valuation for this player, I think. The other player that's been that we've continued to get linked with is Tapsoba, and I think that's what you're saying. As they went from a reliability standpoint, that still should be someone that we should be still targeting, and I'm hoping that we are, because that's a guy that's clearly much more ready-made to play, I think, on the left side. Even though he's right-footed, at least he's got a lot more experience. James, you've seen much of Tapsoba. Have you had time to look into him a little bit?
Yeah, Tapsoba has very good progressive passing numbers, very good progressive carry numbers, good successful take-ons. He's quite a adventurous centre-back, I'd say. He's fairly tall, quick, strong, plays in a back four, creates a shot, has a shot creating action every 90. Overall defensive numbers aren't spectacular, but ultimately when you look at his passing numbers, he's fulfilling the role that Ange would want of a centre-back, right? And he's doing it amicably. Again, always a risk someone coming over into the Premier League from another league into a new system, especially when they're quite young. I mean, Tapsoba's only 24, very young still. There is always that risk, but he's played Champions League and Europa League matches, looked fine there. I think the name we should be thinking about is, well, City have just spent 77 million on Gvardiol, however you say it. Laporte is going to be pushed out. Laporte would be perfect. Not that I think it'll happen, but in my dream.
Yeah, no, I think we've talked about Laporte on the show for good part of the summer so far, and that seemed there's no, I don't see anyone linked with him. Have you seen anyone linked with Laporte? Because that it would seem like he would be an in-demand, ready-made player. He may not be, the tops of everyone's list, but I can't imagine why he wouldn't be attracted to a whole host of clubs.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen him linked with a move to Saudi Arabia and to whichever club he came out of the academy of. I'm not remembering now. Whichever academy he was in, I've seen some links for a while with him going back there, and some links to Spain and France. But nothing concrete, and so it does seem odd that a player who isn't too old, is obviously still a very good player, even if he's not, who Pep Guardiola wants. We're not exactly looking at that same category at the moment. So if you're bringing in Van de Ven and you're bringing in this Ashley Phillips kid, then who aren't going to be ready this next season to just come in and take the league by storm, given their age and experience, it would make a lot of sense to bring in someone like Laporte, because he knows a very similar system, if not identical system, and is obviously got plenty of Premier League experience, international experience, and a lot of quality. So I mean, I've always wondered why we weren't involved in that.
The only thing I can say is it makes too much sense, so therefore it doesn't jive with our transfer policy. That's the only thing I can say, because you're right. And now there's also a new. Have you seen this? Let me bring this up. This just showed up earlier today. I don't know anything about this character. Has anyone seen this? Do anyone know this person? This started getting circulated around today. Never even seen this person play.
You've caught me off guard with this one.
Yeah, I thought so. I was doing this on purpose because here's the two encyclopedic knowledge, people who know arcane players all over the place, and I was wondering if when you see this. I mean, I don't have a good source for this, but it seems a little crazy that this surfaced. I mean, I'm hoping that this isn't true, because if neither one of you've heard about him, I don't know. For all I know, he could be the next Guardiola, or however you pronounce that. That I'm not good in Croatian, but maybe he's the next person come up out of that country. I have no idea, but this showed up on our feed today.
He is a centre back who has played at Dynamo Zagreb for the past 3 seasons. He's played 2 full seasons of football, won the league in every season, and has very underwhelming stats, such as 2 tackles per 90.
Then he's perfect.
Wins 2 aerial duels a 90, never carries the ball forward. The statistic is literally 0, and he plays 1 progressive pass a game, which for a team that's dominating the league, 1 progressive pass a day from your centre-back, that's not spectacular, is it?
Okay.
Who knows? Maybe he's actually good and these stats are bogus, but hadn't heard of him.
What do you guys think? What I know how Isaiah feels about Levy's transfer policy and how the club is run from that standpoint. James, what is your feeling at this point from what you are reading and hearing? What is your gut reaction? Are we just going to get the one in and be done? Is it waiting on the Harry Kane situation resolve, or are they not connected at all?
Well, I imagine that's taking up a lot of his time, right? But then you read in the papers, he rescheduled the meeting. That's a classic Daniel Levy masterclass. To take control of the negotiations. What? Like these things are just. I can't tell if that's actually him just being slightly mental, or if that's just made up. Some of the news I feel is made to personally annoy me, on a personal level, because it just seems so bizarre. It's making me reach for the whatever drink I happen to have. That's disgusting tonight. But I don't know, it's not good. I'm not quite as down in the dumps about it as a lot of people. Because no matter what squad starts against Brentford, we're going to play attacking football. And that's going to make me happy. But yes, everybody knows in the football club, the guy who cleans the toilets knows we need a centre-back, and probably two. Ange knows that as well. And what are we going to get? We might get Mickey in, and then maybe we'll get an 18-year-old in. Or maybe we'll get Joe Rodham in, and nobody else. That's how it feels a little bit. And I know we will probably sign someone. It's just, why haven't we done it already? Look at Maddison. We went in, signed him, got it done quickly, got Winks out the door. I thought that was a sign of how we were going to act in this window. Yeah, back there, go get him. Fees are outrageous. Fair enough. Pay the 35 million. Don't wheel around and offer 17 plus Harry Winks. But no, it's classic Levy not getting it done early in the window.
This is open to either one of you. What do you think is the reason why we still have Hugo at the club? We still have Sanchez at the club. We still have all these players. Do you think it's because Anne said, hey, I want to get a look at everyone? Well, Hugo's wouldn't fall in that category, but I want to get a look at everyone before you start sending them out? Or do you think it's back to the fact that for whatever reason this front office is so incapable of moving players on? Is it because they're on high wages? They're asking for outrageous fees? What's your feeling? Either one of you jump in there on why we still got Winks is the only one out the door of any consequence at this point. What's the holdup?
Well, I think it's tied to not being able to get or not getting people in early. I mean, because the powers that be, Levy and his team, are looking at the situation, probably saying, we haven't gotten in we haven't gotten in center backs. We've gotten in the goalkeeper and Maddison and Solomon. But as far as center backs go and defenders, that's one of the largest areas where the squad is bloated with players who really shouldn't be there, like Sanchez and Dyer, and it remains to be seen on players like Reguilon. But I think they're looking at it we need a certain amount of players, we need a certain number of them. But if we don't sign anyone, then we're going to be short players if we sell all of these guys. And then at the same time, they're probably we need to make sure we can start getting deals secured for these players before we can, spend a bunch of money on new signings. And then, there's that. It might be a situation where
they're crap.
They're not good and people don't want them. And Levy's looking at a situation where he's getting €8 million bid from Galatasaray for Sanchez and saying, if this is all I can get for the guy, I may as well just keep him and not sign one of the center backs I was going to sign or
that's
whatever.
My biggest fear right there. You spot on, is that he won't just terminate contracts and buy the players as an upgrade, but he'll just say, well, if I can't get my fee, guess what, Ange, you get to figure out how Davis and Sanchez can play a high line and progressively pass.
To be fair, we did accept a bid for Sanchez.
From the Moscow.
Yeah,
right.
One of the Russian teams. Fair enough for Davinson Sanchez to not wanting to go there. I wouldn't either. I think
that was pretty mean. Why would you even? That's just mean. I'm sorry. Sanchez, I feel bad for. He is what he is. But sending him to Moscow, politics aside, I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying, don't play in Moscow.
Considering the current global events, I don't think that's where you want to move your family necessarily. For Lloris, he's on fairly high wages. I imagine the kind of team he'd go to would be like a mid-table French side. Are they going to want to pay his wages? Does he want to cut back his wages? He might be sitting there thinking, well, I've been here ages. I can stay here another year, sit on my arse and get paid, then go to France. Maybe that's what he wants to do. Maybe he just doesn't want to leave. Fair enough. All right, fair dues. You look at a number of these players. I think perhaps our valuations are too high. Some of the players just don't want to go. I think that's the thing, because they're not going to get what they have at Spurs anywhere else. Because ultimately, guys like Sanchez, go to Turkey, mate. Go to Azerbaijan. They're not going to get paid anywhere near as much as they get paid at Spurs. And maybe they just don't want to move out of London. Maybe they like where they live. They're comfortable, they're paid lots, they live in a nice city, their whole family's there. I can kind of see that in some of them. Yeah, fair dues.
If we force him to move to Southampton, he might be willing to go to Azerbaijan. I'm not sure, but anyway. So yeah, I think the issue is definitely one is that the track record is clear. This club doesn't sell very well. I'm sorry, they can sell the big players in the past, but I'm talking about just once that we've acquired all these players that are surplus to requirements, they just don't seem to be able to move them on. And I mean, the Doherty situation was kind of surprising that they were willing to terminate a contract just to move somebody out. And you wonder if they're going to be willing to do that again and again, because that may be what it takes for certain players to clear the docks. Because again, we're at 31 or 2 registered players, and you know, I mean, that's clearly at least, you know, 6 to 7 more than you want. And if you get Sanchez out, you get Hugo out, you know, the question is who else are you moving out? I mean, there's a lot of players that still have to go. And I just don't see, you know, the window fortunately stays open well into the season. So I guess this could drag on, but we'll see what happens. All right. So speaking of dragging on, I want to shift gears to the never-ending saga that is our situation with our center forward, Mr. Kane. And I want to show you guys what we came up to. Did anyone see what Build brought out today? There's 2 things that they decided to flood the social media and world with. First one is this beautiful piece. I've got a summary of it from Spurs Express. The Build says that Harry Kane is nothing more than a marketing stunt. He can't play in congested penalty areas. He doesn't work in a possession team the way Lewandowski did. And so this is just, you know, the question is, and I realize Build is a source that is maybe what's y'all's opinion, slightly above the Sun? I'm not really sure where you rank. Yeah, where you rank Build, but I saw this and said, okay, are they basically just trying to provide some cover to Bayern because they don't think the deal's going to get over the line? Is that the reason why they come out with trashing his ability to make it okay that they don't sign him? What's your thought here, James?
Well, I mean, it is a tabloid. I don't know. It's kind of almost like a cross between the Sun and the Daily Mail, just German, basically, from my understanding. I mean, that take is, what are they smoking over there? I mean, I want some of that. I'd like to be that delusional about Spurs. That'd be amazing. Bloody hell, like, crikey. Yeah, what is that? I'm trying to work out if it's actually 4D chess, really intelligent, to kind of make it seem as if, you know, Bayern shouldn't sign him if they don't get him, or if someone there is actually that stupid. And I can't tell. I'm leaning on maybe I think someone there is just stupid, and maybe they have their head hit at birth, and if they want to sue me, they can do it. I don't care.
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't know if it's stupid as much as just they have no journalistic integrity, and they're willing to print anything that gets clicks, like the Sun, you know, like the Daily Mail or 90-minute football. And as a journalist, it really, really bugs me when people do that. I mean, it bothers everyone, but for me, it's just like, it's not that hard to produce content that isn't complete bullshit that's also still interesting. And so just the clickbait crap like this, where apparently now he's not a possession team striker because Harry Kane's not good enough on the ball for in somehow, and how Lewandowski apparently was some great, you know, build up link up striker. I mean, not saying anything bad about Lewandowski, but that's a big strength Kane has over Lewandowski for sure. It's ridiculous reporting, and it's got to just be for clicks.
Well, not to be outdone, they decided to outdo themselves, because then we got this as well. Harry Kane is so desperate to get out of Tottenham that he's willing to write a check to Daniel Levy for £20 million. I mean, I think this is probably one of my favorite stories or social media events of all time. I think this is, I mean, as a sports fan, my whole life, I think this is probably in the top 3 all-time ridiculous things I've ever seen, even in an era of X. This is genius right here. And I said when I read this, I said, you know what fun it must be to work for Build. I mean, to sit around, doing shots of Jägermeister, saying, okay, what are we going to come up with next, right? And I know, Harry's going to pay Daniel Levy 20 million pounds just to get out of there. I mean, that's just, I don't even understand how this gets into print.
They just write down a bunch of ridiculous ideas, then pin them all to the wall, and then they just drunkenly throw darts, go, yeah, print that one then. The source for this is seemingly just trust me, dude. Like, what? No. I think, can a player buy themselves out of their remaining contract?
Generally, that they're able to structure some sort of deal, but it's not like they have to pay. It doesn't generally work that they have to pay the club what the club was going to pay them, and which is what they seem to be suggesting, that it would just be that he's foregoing the money. But the story, and maybe it's a bad translation, but
it probably is. I mean, in fairness to them, it's probably a translation issue that he's just willing to tear up his contract and walk away.
But it's been credibly reported by non-tabloids, people actually who might have some contacts in Kane's camp, like Alistair Gold and Charlie Eccleshare and Dan Kilpatrick, that he doesn't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize his Spurs legacy when he could just leave for free, where no one would blame him next season. There'd be no, if he were to tear up his contract and leave us a year early and still give us not allow us the chance to get a decent fee for him, that would be a huge hit to his legacy. That would be, I think a lot of fans would be very upset with him for doing that. I wouldn't be thrilled. I could kind of understand it, but I have no doubt in my mind that he would never consider doing that. Number one, foregoing those wages, and number two, damaging his Spurs legacy like that as our homegrown player and all-time leading scorer.
Yeah, I feel that's fairly right. I don't know if that reporter that got banned was he from the same outfit, the one who showed up with the Kane shirt in the presser with Ange?
I think so.
Okay, cool. You think so? I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
I didn't remember what outfit he was associated with. Well, I think that's a good question, good transition, because I think that's really the question that is, where is this all going to go? I mean, I personally am of the opinion that it's never made any sense to me why he would, 6 months when he could negotiate a free contract with Bayern or anyone else outside of England, why he would go now, unless he was saying, hey, I love you, Tottenham, but I'm not going to stay. I'm not going to sign a new contract, and I want to get the maximum fee for you guys that I possibly can, because I know how well you'll spend it. And I think that that would be the only logical reason, after saying, okay, what was it, a year ago that he said, I don't want to leave England or so. So it's never made any sense why he would be going to Bayern. And I personally think that, I believe it's 60-40 that he stays at this point, because I just don't see the movement. Bayern is a lot of talk, a lot of bravado, but not a lot in concrete offers. So James, I got a question for you. I'm just going to ask you, Mr. Levy has come to you and asked for advice as to how he should handle this situation at this point. What would you advise him to do? Should he just simply say, here's the price, pay it or walk away, or should he continue to drag this out to see how much money he can get out of him? What do you think the end game is? What would you advise to be, Daniel, at this point, how to handle this situation?
Set a deadline, 10 days in the future. Say, we will not go below 100 million. That is our absolute minimum. Add-ons are negotiable. We'll talk about add-ons. If you are willing to pay potentially, total transfer fee must be over 100 million. The upfront fee of that must be at least 75% of that 100 million. The structuring of the fees can be adjusted and we can negotiate that. But if we don't come to an agreement in 10 days' time, he's staying, you say to Harry, if they meet our valuation, we'll sell you. but they've got 10 days to do it. Otherwise, you're staying. Done. Simple as.
Do you tell them what that evaluation is, or do you continue to let them?
No, you say it's minimum 100 million.
Which means it's 100 million.
Yeah. I mean,
Is it?
obviously they might not want to pay 100 million up front. They might want to
No,
pay,
nobody does.
85, and then there's add-ons which are basically guaranteed. That's fine. Happy to negotiate that. But you're giving us 100 million pounds for Harry Kane. Just how that's structured, we'll negotiate.
Is 100 million enough?
We're talking euros or pounds?
Pounds.
Yes. Well, I mean, I would say it's a reasonable that's where we're getting into a reasonable valuation of losing the chance to renegotiate a deal with him and losing him for a season. Is it enough in the sense that I think Levy and co will piss it away on, bad targets? No, it's but no amount's enough. They'll piss away any amount of money. So, but I think the biggest thing that the only thing that would kind of sway me a little bit in terms of whether or not the deal could actually be of some value and work out well for us is if they're willing to include players going the other way. Someone I think will get to talking about later in terms of replacements as Mathys Tel, or however his name is pronounced, the French player that they have at Bayern. He's 18 and drawing lots of comparisons to Mbappe. I think, a player, if he gets scouted and they can see like, okay, this is a real talent, they include that and without reducing the fee by much at all, if any, I would say, I'd say if they could include a player that's of real value to us, whether it's Tell, this young 18-year-old, or someone else in their squad who Ange says, yeah, I mean, this would be a hell of a signing independent of the Kane situation. So if we can get him as part of the deal, then maybe you're looking at something that works out in the longer term. If you're thinking it's probable you're going to lose him anyway for free. That would be probably the only, that would be my advice to Levy, is see if you can get someone in return directly from them as part of this deal, or one of those side deals like the Winks Madison situation or the KWP Højbjerg situation. Just something like that actually gives us a little more value, a player we know is good, or a player that they've done the scouting for us instead of whoever the hell does that for Spurs. I think that would be a big plus for us if that could happen.
Yeah, I think you brought up a good point, because I think that 100 million pounds plus add-ons is going to be the right number for Daniel, because I don't know that he thinks he can re-sign him, right? And my fear, of course, is you articulated in sarcasm, which is, our track record with buying players is particularly players at the high end price hasn't been so great, obviously. I like the idea of negotiating some sort of player coming the other direction, because if they're on the Bayern squad, even if I don't know anything about them, I'll take a flyer on the fact that they're better than who's on, in our squad in a lot of cases. So I agree that makes sense. But those player swaps are less common, obviously, in European football than they are other sports, other parts of the world. So I don't know if that's going to work. But I think that 100 million pounds, James, to your point, is probably the number that gets them over the line. I still just don't understand from Harry's perspective what he gains by going to Germany. I know that the only thing, obviously, it's Champions League, right? He has an opportunity to win the Champions League, and it would be the only trophy that he would win over there that would potentially enhance his legacy. I still but knowing the competition from City, from Real Madrid, Barcelona isn't going anywhere, as well as other English clubs. There's still no guarantee that you get there. So I'm just not sure what's in it for him, because again, they're gonna, Bayern can afford the 100 million. There's no question. The Athletic put out a good piece there. The guy who covers Bayern Munich did a good financial analysis in short today. They clearly have the money. It's not an issue. It would be their record fee, and certainly outside of their traditional purchase price, but more than enough. I'm convinced Daniel Levy would never sell Harry for anything less than he got for Bale, which turned out to be in the end about 100 million euros. So I know that it's going to have to be over 100 million pounds probably to get him out. There's no way he's going to sign potentially the best player that has ever played at Tottenham for less than the club record fee. I just don't know if it makes sense for all parties. And I think in the end, Bayern's going to walk away from this because Daniel's too difficult to deal with. Harry, I don't know about this comment from Dean here. I'm not sure that Harry or his camp are the ones leaking stuff. But it doesn't seem to me that he is desperate to get out, knowing that in 6 to 12 months, all of the cards are, with him. He owns all the leverage, and he gets exactly what he wants at that point. And he can sign. But for me, if we sell him to Bayern Munich, I'm fine with that because I don't want to see him lining up against Tottenham. So send him to Journey, include a buyback clause if Bayern Munich will agree to that, so that in 3 years or 4 years or whatever, you have the opportunity at, let's say you sell him for 100, you got a buyback clause at 50, something along those lines, that we could bring him back so that he doesn't show up at Newcastle or Chelsea or Man United or whatever. That's the main thing. That would just be painful. I mean, it's not like it hasn't happened before. I mean, obviously, plenty of Spurs players and everyone's gone to rivals, but it would just, for me personally, given my shorter history than a lot with Spurs, to watch him play for United or Newcastle would be painful. So sending him to Germany is fine with me. I just still think the deal's not going to get. That's my feeling, is the deal's just not going to get done. And I think that this point about that, that's a great handle, TS Wagon. I like that picture. This kid, Hoyland, the cheap Holland, getting 80. I mean, I realize he's a totally different profile, completely different age group and all that sort of stuff. But if United thinks he's worth 80, I just don't understand how you shouldn't be asking for at least 125. And that's what the Athletics reporting in that article from their guy who's covering Munich, is that they're still 25 million pounds apart on valuation. And that would suggest potentially, like you're saying, James, well north of 100 million pounds is what Daniel Levy wants.
I think Kane's actually in a little bit of a tricky situation, because if I'm Kane, I go, yeah, I'm going to see out my contract. I'll stay here another year, then I can go anywhere I want on earth and get a huge sign-on bonus, probably 20 million. From Bayern's perspective, it makes total sense, because you sign Harry Kane, you're guaranteed. I mean, they're always guaranteed the Bundesliga, but Dortmund have been catching up a little bit. Signing him guarantees the Pokal and the league. Maybe not the Pokal, but it definitely guarantees them the league. And I think it makes them more competitive in the Champions League. Instead of being a 6th, 7th team, it probably pushes them into 4th, right, semi-finals. It pushes them a bit further in the Champions League, right? It's probably the highest convenient signing they could possibly do to improve them. From Kane's perspective, it might be beneficial for the club to sell him. He might not want to stay here beyond 12 months because he wants to go somewhere else, which I get. Now, from his perspective, he might go, I don't necessarily super want to go to Germany, but if the club wants to sell me, is that better for my legacy at Spurs to, move to Bayern than it would be to go in a year's time to Madrid on a free? That's what I'd hope he'd be thinking. That's my, optimistic thing. But again, if I was Kane,
sentimental to you.
Yeah, well, you can understand that, right? But if I'm Kane, I'm going, I am not leaving. I'm staying another year. Then I'm pissing off to Madrid because hot weather, probably going to win the Champions League. Would rather go there, mate. I don't want to go to Bavaria.
I mean, Munich is, I've heard, great. I've not been there, but I've heard Munich is a wonderful place to live, and his English wouldn't be a problem because they speak better English than he does. So I think that it's not a bad place to live, from what I understand. I just personally haven't been, but yeah, I've been to Madrid, and I can tell you, I would be more than happy to relocate to Madrid anytime. Yeah,
not any slander against Germany. Germany's a lovely country. I'd probably like to move there at some point in my life, but Bayern Munich or Real Madrid, which is the bigger club? It's not difficult, is it?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Madrid, with Benzema gone to Saudi Arabia, thinking about Madrid with Harry Kane and their Champions League pedigree, they go into it every season, no matter who they're lining up with. They go into it expecting to win. from fans to players, they all just have that expectation that they're going to win, and they often do, and they probably will again in the next 3 years, whether he goes or not. So in my head, it would just make so much more sense that he would say, okay, yeah, I go to Bayern, I guarantee a few Bundesligas, some German Cup titles, and I have good shot at getting the Champions League. Or I go to Madrid and make it almost a guarantee, and
At least to be probably playing in the final.
Yeah, for sure. He at least gets. That's probably the only place people talking about like guarantees of silverware and stuff. The closest place to a guarantee of the Champions League trophy is Madrid, and you just think, all right, I can play for Spurs one last season, and barring some incredible revival under Postecoglou, I can go wherever I want. Like James said, if they don't have to pay a transfer fee, they'll put a huge chunk of that right into my bank account, as clubs, are all in my ear to get me to sign. So it just from his perspective seems like unless they're willing to pay, out the ass for him, and for a player who's got 1 year left on his deal, unless they're willing to really fork over some serious cash, and the club says it's better for us if we sell you than you leave in a year, and if we're being optimistic and sentimental, he thinks, and he wants to help the club. That would be the only reason I'd see that he would want to go, that he would go to Bayern when he could, find himself at Madrid for free in a year's time. Start negotiating that in 6 months. Yeah, I mean, I think we're all in agreement on that, to be fair.
Yeah, I think the thing that annoys me the most about the fact that we might sell him isn't Kane leaving the club, because players will leave, and you support a club, not players. In my view, I'm not one of these who buys the shirt of the player no matter where they go, right? The thing that will annoy me the most is the possibility that Charlie Kane gets a massive agent fee. That's probably the part that annoys me.
That's a good point.
Yeah, but you're a football player, right? You've got everything you possibly need, right? If I don't know, won the lottery, secretly was given billions by a billionaire, right? I'd give my dad some bullshit job to do. I'd give my mum some bullshit jobs to do and just pay them loads of money. Wouldn't everyone with their family just give some made up? So I don't mind him doing that, but it is quite funny he goes to an office every day to check Facebook or Twitter. I don't know what he does all day. Like, if I was him, I would just be shamelessly on a beach somewhere with a laptop, be like, "Don't worry, Harry, mate, sorting out your next contract." Why are you in the Bahamas then? I'm meeting with Joe himself, mate.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. I mean, that's kind of my point there. Anyway, so let's move on to, all right, let's say I'm wrong. I don't think Kane's going anywhere, but I'm not necessarily convinced, I'll be honest with you. Let me be clear. Kane is arguably the greatest player of the club, and he's clearly, arguably, and in my opinion, the best striker in the world right now. But he is not the profile exactly of an Ange center forward, at least in what we've seen him play recently. So two topics that you can mix and match as you go. One is, what do you see as the best replacements out there? First question is, do you think we should replace him let's say we sell him, do we need to bring in another striker, number 9, in this window? Yes or no? And 2, who do you like, or profile of a player? And 3, do you think that Richarlison will, regardless, would be the odds-on starter, and how do you think he would do in the system? And take any of those topics as you want, Isaiah, to kind of chew on a little bit.
Well, first, I'd like to quickly address the most recent comment about why fans of the U.S. national team follow players from the national team around.
All right, that's fair.
A lot of countries do that. All of our regional countries do that. Canada, Mexico, and Central America, they follow their players all over the place, and it's usually from countries that haven't had a lot of historical success in international competition. When you're a country like England, where you've got players all over the place and all through the league system who played for youth and senior national teams, it's kind of less special when one of your players moves to a big club, gets a dream move to Real Madrid, or even, dare I say it, Chelsea, like Pulisic, or now Milan. So we follow those players because we just don't have that many of them, and it's exciting to see the development for our national team program. That's what happens for.
And for someone of my generation, the only time you really got to see soccer on television is when the national team was playing in a tournament. And so we didn't grow up with professional leagues. We didn't grow up with clubs in our hometown. We didn't get to watch. The only soccer I had to watch is when I was playing it, and so we just haven't had the benefit of being inundated with great viewing and great leagues and all that sort of stuff. So I did recently find out possibly why, though. Just a quick aside because I know the Cheese Room Nation is dying to know this. Here I'm 53 years old, and I started playing at 6. 1976 in a town outside of Rochester, New York. I started playing. I could never figure out why my parents would sign me up for a sport that I was convinced they never knew existed. And it turns out, my dad and I were talking, he's pretty sure that that Pele came to play in Rochester back in the old NASL days, and they went to see Pele play and took me to see Pele play in 1976, and found out that there was a league that they could sign me up for. And I guess maybe my mom liked the idea. It didn't look like, football, like American style football, or violent and stuff. And so signed me up to play that sport. So hopefully that addresses your question, Kelso. I'm sure no one else in the entire world cares. But moving back to replacements, Richarlison's role, whether we should even sign a replacement of Harry in this window or not. Go ahead, Isaac.
Well, there's
thanks, David.
My preferred option from outside of the Premier League is the Ghent player, Gift Orban, and I think he is the profile of a sort of, especially if we're looking for someone that's going to be behind Richarlison for the early stages, to see if Richarlison is going to kind of develop into the striker that he is for Brazil, and that I personally think he very much can be for us. If we're looking for someone like that, definitely Gift Orban. I mean, just the pace and strength alone. I don't know if anybody watched the friendly against West Ham, but he is explosively quick. He's 0 to 100 just instantly, and his speed over distance is really, really impressive as well. And he's a bulky, low center of gravity guy. I mean, he bullies center backs of all sorts of sizes. Going back to following American players, I've seen him bully Mark McKenzie. And that's a big guy. He may not be the best defender in the world, but he's a big guy. And so I think for the profile that Ange is going to be looking for, strong, runs in behind, really quick, and a very good dribbler, he's a very good option. And then there's the person I mentioned earlier from Bayern, Mathis Tel, who has similar attributes minus the strength and a little bit more height.
James, what do you think?
Just to quickly respond to Kelso's comment, asking about Welsh fans also do that. We also follow players wherever they go. I know way too much about random Welsh players transferring. Anyway,
good point.
I think it's just I shouldn't say small nations, smaller footballing nations. You understand what I mean?
There you go.
When
Exactly.
you look at Ange, the guy who scored loads of goals for him last season was, I'm going to butcher this. I apologize for anyone from Japan. Kyogo Furunashi. There we go. He's 5'7". He's quite quick. He runs in behind. What we've seen in preseason so far is the kind of areas Ange wants his striker to get into. Kane doesn't get into. He drops in. Richarlison does. I mean, his finishing it's been atrocious so far. He's got a hat trick, didn't he? But he gets in those kinds of positions. I don't know that we necessarily need to sign an out-and-out striker. We do need to sign an attacking front line player if Kane leaves. But I'm going to sound crazy here, but I look at Richarlison, he suits Ange. I look at Son, I think Son up front could score. If he gets back to his form, he could score 20 goals. I look at that and think we don't actually have to go and sign an exact Kane profile player. We could sign someone else to play in that front line, even a winger, And then Richarlison or Son play up front. And Kulu sits on the bench perhaps. And I think we could do that. I don't think Ange necessarily wants someone like Kane specifically. I mean, Ivan Toney is going to be free from his ban in 6 months' time. I think he'd be a very good option. He's very similar profile to Kane. So if he does go, maybe we sign another attacking player who's a bit more flexible. And then Ange makes it work with Richie because, he does it for Brazil. If you can do it for Brazil, if you look like the star in the team when Neymar's there, you're good enough for Spurs.
I agree with you, by the way. I will just say, in addition to that, though, the quality of technical ability around him is significantly higher than what we have, although we haven't seen these players deployed in a system that it wants to attack like Brazil. So maybe I could be wrong in that once these players fully digest Ange's system, they will get a little bit closer, or shall I say more Brazil-like, and give Richie that opportunity.
Well, you look at our midfield, right? You got Maddison, Bentancur, Bissouma, looks like Lo Celso maybe. Those guys were very good technically. Even Højbjerg isn't terrible. Our other frontline players, Kulu, had a bad season. Everyone had a bad season last year, apart from Kane. Son, Solomon looks decent. There are good players around him, and obviously we'd have to add someone else to play in that front line, or Perisic even. Definitely, a top 50, 60 million pound sort of signing. And then I suppose if it doesn't work, we can always go get Toney in January, can't we? But I don't think we have to be hamstrung in the idea if we have to go sign someone exactly like Kane, because whoever it is going to disappoint us, be worse. Why not try to progress into Ange's system and sign someone who will better suit him?
Yeah, I think given this, I think your point is well taken, James, because from what I understand, not being an Angelophile completely, but he will deploy that false nine type of role through the middle. And so you're right. We don't need a prototypical striker for that role. And that's why I agree with you. If you sell Kane, you don't have to buy a true number 9. You just buy another attacker. And if you're flexible in what type of attacker that is, that opens up a lot of options because you'll have plenty of money to spend. You'll be able to buy 2. You'll be able to get Van de Ven and Tosin, or Van de Ven and Tapsoba, and another player for that. So it won't exactly be the Bale summer, but you could certainly see a bit of a buying spree towards the end of the window that brings you in lots of flexibility and lots of options. I agree. I'm not convinced that even if you sell them, you have to replace them. There's we've got enough people who can play up front even as it is in this system that I still say to one of these other comments earlier is sort the defense, put the money in center back. I mean, if you think about it, I think the three of us come up with how many center backs have we bought since we brought Toby to the club?
Sanchez and Romero. Oh, Joe Rodon. That's it, isn't it?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
When did we sign Toby?
2016, I think. Was it 2016?
Yeah.
For the 15-16 season, right?
I thought it was for
the 16-17. Somebody's got the internet will tell us, but regardless, think about that. 3. It's 2023. It's 2020 flipping 3. And one of the center backs you bought was Joe Rodon. No offense to Paul Muir and all the Rodon fans and James, your countryman. But still, the idea that those are the 3 you've bought since you brought in Toby, arguably one of the best center backs to play in the last 30 years for the club. It is, and having never actually even replaced Vertonghen. I mean, it is criminally dereliction of duty what they've done at center back to this club over the last 5 to 6 years. And so, yeah, whether you sell Kane or not, I agree with one of the comments earlier. If you do sell him, that money better be deployed into the defense and let the attack sort itself, because I agree with people's comments. I think Solomon can get goals. I think Richie can get goals. I think Son can get goals. I think Kulu can get goals. I think Matter can. We got people who can finish at this club. Hell, I don't know. I mean, you've even got Bentancur coming back. I think you've got plenty of people who can find the back of the net in this system. That money's got to go into center defense. It's criminal what this club and Daniel Levy's done to the center backs situation over the last 5-7 years.
It's quite painful because you look at this and you think, okay, Maddison and Big Mick, who might have big something else. Don't go there. You get those two guys in. Okay, we have 3 top centre backs: Romero, Mickey D, Tapsoba. And then, okay, Kane goes. You find any attacking player to replace him who can have some output in goals and assists. You look at that and think, well, we've got a very good midfield, in terms of ability.
We have a
We'll have a
fantastic
solid back
midfield.
line, and we'll still have an insanely talented front line. Son, we all know how good Son is. We'll have a guy who scores acrobatic goals for Brazil in World Cups. Kulu, maybe, and then someone else. I look at that and think, yeah, we actually have a good team. Whereas, midway through the season with Conte, it's like, oh, no, I've got no options, mate. Oh, it's got to be Højbjerg and Skip again. And you just look at that and think, that is dreadful. I don't want to watch that.
I found my son's burner account. It's right here. So it turns out this is my son's burner account. He's not wearing his Højbjerg kit shirt right now, but I can see this is clearly you either paid TF Swag to put this up, or this is your burner account.
Well, I would like it known that I did not post that we should have gone for Mohamed Salisu. But no offense, just not a player I'm a huge fan of. No, I agree with that Højbjerg's ball playing ability is sort of underrated. But that aside, I agree that we have plenty of players in the team who can play across the front line. Even Kulusevski has experience with Parma and Juventus playing in the center forward role, sort of a second striker and even false nine. I think basically all of our forwards, save for maybe Solomon, can fill in that role. And that's sort of why when talking about Kane replacements, I was thinking more players like Gift Orban or Mathis Tell, who are players who you think, okay, that could be a really good signing for the future, because we don't necessarily need them to slot right into the team, and you don't want to drop a whole bunch of the Kane money on another striker when, Paul said, that money needs to be poured into the defense, because it was 2015 that we signed Toby Alderweireld, and it is only Sanchez, Romero, and Joe Rodon that we've signed in that time frame.
It's criminal dereliction of duty.
And we've known, and Romero is recent. I mean, there was still a huge stretch of what would that have been 6 years without signing a decent center back, anyone who was any good. Again, no offense to Joe Rodon, but a little offense to Sanchez. And that has to change, particularly if we get money for Kane. I agree that we should be looking at Tapsoba and Van de Ven if we have the Kane money, as well as getting this 18-year-old if he's going to be good, Ashley Phillips, and Tosin Adebayor. I can't say his last name. Tosin Fulham. I think a third center back even, and then at that point you can let Sanchez go for pennies.
You could tear up his contract.
Yeah.
Pay it out.
Let him go wherever he wants to go at that point.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at the guys who could go out, I agree completely. Get these, deals done. Just get them done. Then you can focus on bye-bye Sessegnon, bye-bye Sanchez, goodbye Eric Dyer, bye-bye. Get a Stoke or something. That's your level.
Dyer's not going anywhere. Sorry.
No, don't care. Just change the key to the training ground so he can't get in. I don't know. Right? He's not good enough. Bye-bye. Lloris, au revoir. You look around the team and you think, okay, unless we got Udi, pronounced that awfully wrong. Then we've got Davies and Reggie. Okay, one of Davies or Reggie's has to go. I love Davies, but he is 30. I think Reggie has a higher ceiling. Okay, bye-bye. Been a great servant. Go to Cardiff, because all Welsh players really only care about the national team. Go play for Cardiff, no worries, mate. You look around the team, in midfield, someone's going to have to go. We have so many midfielders. Maybe it's Ndombele. I think Højbjerg's fine as a rotation option, but okay, what are we doing with Skip and Sarr? We have Skip, Sarr, Bentancur, Bissouma, Maddison, Lo Celso, Højbjerg. We have a lot of midfielders. We have probably one or two too many. Maybe Skip goes out on loan. Maybe Skip and Sarr go out on loan. Then Ndombele leaves. that would make some sense. Does Perisic stay? I don't mind Perisic staying, but you look around the team, there's so many players we can get out the door, get off the wages, and generate some cash that I think if we just get these deals done, we can probably shift about in, savings in wages and fees, probably 50, 60 million. In fact, if Ndombele moves on and we don't pay any of his wages, well, he's on like 16 million in wages a year.
Yeah,
so.
There's no one paying those wages. Yeah, it's gonna be. I think we could do a whole show on what the midfield should look like, where that's going to sort out. I do want to on the defense side. Your burner account talks about we have never replaced Walker, and while he was already I realized he wasn't a replacement, but this has always chapped my rear a little bit. I mean, I still don't understand reason why Pochettino and or the club chased Kieran Trippier out of the door, out the door. And he had one bad season when he was hurt, and yet he's clearly come back and proven once again he was a quality. I mean, if you were getting rid of Walker and you thought Trippier was good, not as good, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that they're the same back, but he was more than quality enough to be there. Would have been nice to have him all these years because clearly you can see what he's doing up in the northwest in the northeast of the country, and just clearly that was just a shame that we forced him out of the club because he clearly wasn't looking to move on. So, but anyway, that's just a quick side to TS Swag's comment. Yeah, no, what this team has done with when we at one time had the best back line in potentially all of Europe to where we are today is just criminal. I mean, it really is. And so I hope against hope that they're going to fix that situation. But I don't see why I should believe that.
Well, we signed Pedro Porro for nearly 50 million, didn't we? Yeah,
and may turn out to be a really good signing. Who knows? But I mean, we spent. I did the total. My son and Isaiah and I had an argument this week about this, and I did the total. If you just include the players, not loans, but players we've bought, including any loan fees that we paid, like for Kulu and Porro and stuff like that, since 2019-20 season, this club has spent 653 million pounds on transfers. 653 million. And up until this window, that was more than Arsenal. Now Arsenal blew past us with that great deal for Rice at 105, which I'm not criticizing that deal. It's just a lot of money for a defensive midfielder who may or may not make them significantly better, but I could be wrong. I like the player, but he's just not enamored with him. And 65 million for Kai Havertz, which I still can't figure out. But it's a lot of money, but of those players, one of the most useful that came out of that 653 million pounds is Forster on a free, Perisic on a free. I mean, we spent a lot. Richie, I think will come good. Porro, I think will come good, but that's 110 million. That really hasn't yielded a whole lot so far. I mean, it's remarkable. I mean, heck, Reggie was 30 million. Bergwijn was 30 million. I mean, just start totaling it up. This club hasn't spent well.
Sanchez was 42 million for one good season.
Money, and that's why if anyone's still listening out there to me, is stop the narrative about Daniel Levy being cheap. It's not that he's cheap. He just doesn't execute any sort of strategy for creating the kind of football that the team should be playing, doesn't support the manager with the right kind of buys. It's not the dollars, it's the strategy and poor recruitment that this club has just potentially pissed away, 653 million pounds over the last 5 years or so. It's just ridiculous. So I don't know, maybe that'll change, but I don't know why we believe that. Last topic, just before we wrap up, and let me just say, hey, for those who are watching, please hit the like button. If you haven't, please smash that like and consider the Patreon page. There's information on the site to learn about. We've got a great Patreon group where you can meet all of the hosts from the podcast, all the people who do the YouTubes, chat with us every single day, participate in all of our in-season competitions and fantasy football leagues and all that sort of stuff. So please do that. £3 a month. It also has a ticket exchange. Speaking of ticket exchange, we've got a protest planned for our first home game over the increase in per game ticket prices. They froze the tickets for season ticket holders and jacked up the prices for people like James, who, unlike us, unlike my son, is no longer in the south of England, but would go to games every once in a while. And so we've got a protest plan being organized, seems like, by the trust. Thoughts on that? James?
Yeah, I mean, the ticket price increases are ridiculous. I mean, we're the most expensive club in the country to go see, and we finished 8th last season. Yeah, pay the most money. Some people complain about the food and drink in the stadium. Do you know what? Yeah, it's expensive. It's London. Everything's expensive in London.
But the food and drink's pretty good.
Yeah, and the food and drink's pretty good. Like, I don't know, like $5 for a beer. Like, I've paid. I went to a pub actually last week where they were trying to charge £7.50 for a pint. Like, okay, it's not that bad. The food's good. I mean, yeah, it's a little pricey. It's in London in a stadium. Like, I'm not angry at the club for that. But increasing ticket prices after an abysmal season, when the stadium's operating at high revenue, when we're a profitable football club, I think it's just completely outrageous. I can't afford to go to Spurs. Train is 30 quid. I have a rail card, 30 quid. Okay, 30 quid. Ticket's going to be 60 quid, 90 quid. You know, food, drink, all that stuff. It's like 150 quid day out, isn't it? Or I can go to my local football team, where with a season ticket, it's like £300. And beer's like 4 quid, and I can walk there. I love Spurs, but it ain't a tough choice. I'm going to go see my local and I'll watch Spurs in my pub.
And do you think this protest do you think it's going to garner any real, I mean, unlike the Enoch Out where we get, a couple dozen blokes at best holding up some banners, do you think the trust is going to organize a meaningful protest? And do you think it's going to make a dent in anyone's opinion over there at Hotspur Way?
I hope so, because I think unlike Enoch Out, which is we want Enoch to sell the club, which is a bit vague, this is reverse the ticket price hikes. This is, to put it in politics terms, this is a single issue. This is something very easy to understand, and I think pretty much every fan agrees on that ticket prices shouldn't go up. I don't know if many fans are thinking, yeah, this is brilliant, make tickets more expensive, make it 80 quid to go see Rotherham or something, So I think it will definitely get a lot more support from fans and football in general. Will it change Levy? Probably not. No, because he's quite narrow-minded, which I respect, but I don't think it will. Maybe if there's like enormous protests, maybe they will review it and they'll revert the changes. But I think with the costs going up so much, especially when we're in a cost of living crisis, everything's expensive. It's tough, right? Putting up prices is reading the room about as well as telling a joke at a funeral.
Which actually is more acceptable than raising prices right now, in my opinion, on tickets.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I don't know.
Sometimes people need to laugh at a funeral. I'll be honest with you. I've been to enough of them.
Very true. No, I think hopefully, my honest hope is this does lead to a decrease in people going to matches. So the revenue is hit, and then Levy goes, because if we cut prices back, if he decreased it for like a £5 for all categories, okay, I can guarantee you, if like West Ham did this for a while, kids only go for one, only have to pay £1 of a parent, right? Sell cheap tickets, you'll sell out the stadium every bloody week, and people are going to go spend food. Like, okay, revenue might be down slightly, but the goodwill you buy with the fans and the fact the stadium's packed every game, I think is more than worth that. It's the same in Germany. I just think it's morally reprehensible to increase prices. I get that going to the football isn't a necessity, but ultimately it's a lot of people's escape.
Yeah, I agree. I am doubtful that it's going to have an impact, but I hope at the very least it makes for a lot of bad press and negative headlines. I think raising the issue of ticket prices should have been done for years. I mean, working class has been priced out of the Premier League games for years now. Now, cynically, you could say, okay, now it's starting to hit middle class people and their ability to afford to go. And so now there's all of a sudden a protest. But I hope that, I don't think it'll make a change, but I hope at least it gives them pause as to think about, okay, how soon are they going to raise prices again? Maybe it'll stop the next hike in 3 years. Yeah. I don't know.
It's what I'd like to call the PR equivalent of at PMQ's shitting yourself, isn't it? It's dreadful. Sorry, continue. My hair doing that as I finished is hilarious.
Yeah. So, all right, Isaiah, you got any thoughts on this on the ticket increase and whether this protest is going to have an impact? Or what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm in most circumstances an advocate of a very specific form of protest. In this case, that might be a little overboard, but I honestly I don't know how much some chants and banners really affects anything, and I just I don't know what should be done. I'm not saying that they shouldn't do the protest. I'm not saying that like it's stupid or that there's a better idea because I don't have one. But for me, I do kind of agree with what you're saying about like this has been an issue for a long time, and it sort of runs parallel in my mind to everybody, including me, is very upset about what Saudi Arabia is doing to European football now. But that comparison can be drawn exactly to what English football in the Premier League did to Scotland and Ireland and their football, as well as other countries in Europe and developing programs that they kind of squashed by taking all of the players from. And it's a similar thing now. It's been a long time, like you said, since working class people could easily afford to regularly go to Spurs games, to Premier League games in general, let alone get season tickets. And, Levy came out and made a statement and recognized that there's a cost of living crisis and that it's people are falling on hard times, for lack of a better phrase, and said, we're not going to increase season ticket prices. And then he went and increased the individual ticket prices. So it's a clear recognition of okay, there's an issue. But I don't really care that much. I'm going to raise all of these prices, and I agree with James. I'd like to see this mean that there's fewer butts in the seats, but the problem is that's probably not going to come to pass because he's created a situation, created a stadium, created a product and a brand that brings in tourists, and those seats get filled by tourists if they don't get filled by fans. So regardless of what the atmosphere looks like and all of that, we're probably still going to be selling very similar numbers of tickets to how many we'd be selling if we were good and if the prices were reasonable.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. I mean, we play in the Premier League. We get a huge amount of TV revenue. We've been in Europe for every of the last 9 years. We've had European revenue. Our stadium is very profitable, 62,000 seater. It hosts all sorts of events. We have all these sponsorships, which rake in loads of money for the club. And you look at a club like Borussia Dortmund, who don't do any of that. And okay, they sell a lot. Look at a club like Bayern. Their tickets are far, far cheaper. And they don't have the same revenue that we have. Nowhere near the same revenue from commercial and the Premier League. Yet they managed to offer that in Germany. It's just ridiculous in general. I mean, the only way it's affordable to go to games on a regular basis, unless you are quite well off or making a serious sacrifice somewhere else in your life, is if you support a team in the lower leagues.
Yeah, and I think you guys, the unfortunate thing is that the ship has sailed. I mean, the Premier League was founded, and it's just on the idea of how much can we maximize from TV, and it just continues to accelerate, and it is what it is. I don't think it's going to change. And you make a point about tourists. It'd be great if you could charge a tax on foreigners like myself when I come to games, and not hit people who are trying to get to locals who are trying to get to games. But I don't see anything like that happening. It is what it is, and I hope the protest is huge, and I hope it potentially forestalls any future increases. Because they realize that the amount of revenue. I think your dad calculated, James, was something like they might raise an additional £1 million a year, maybe, or something. It's just such a small. I mean, it just is such a petty amount of money just to piss so many people off.
That's like what? That's a month. That's 5 weeks of Tungi and Dombele, or you could cut it, and okay, maybe it hits the club in 3 million revenue. But I bet you ticket sales would go up. Okay, ticket sales would go up because we would have slightly higher attendance. You'd probably have slightly higher hospitality revenues because you get people more willing to spend a little bit more at the club. You could do all these things, supply and demand. lower the cost, more people will come. And ultimately, the amount of goodwill that would buy you with the fans saying, okay, we're going to cut ticket prices, that would be immense. It's just, I don't understand it. I don't even think it's greed, really. I think it's just, well, maybe it is. Maybe it's just idiocy. I don't know.
Yeah. I'd pay the extra amount if you told me that, hey, we're going to raise ticket prices. We're going to take that extra money, that $1 million, and that's going to be able to buy 100 seats for, kids in the local N17 area who could never afford to go to a game. We're going to pay for the transportation. We're going to give them a seat, give them a meal, and your extra $3 on this ticket is going to fund that. I'd be all over it. But the notion it's just going to go into ENIC's pocket is just unconscionable. So, oh well. All right. We are about an hour and 15 into this. I think that's covered our topics pretty well. I appreciate, James, you coming on and helping us out here, even spending time with the Yanks talking Spurs. I really do appreciate it. And I'm glad, Son's joined to the show for the first time from the stateside as opposed to in the south of the country. So thank you to joining, as I appreciate it. Any parting comments you want to throw at us Americans here, James, before we go?
No, you've both been lovely. Pleasure to be on as ever. You've both been lovely.
Thank you very much.
Isaiah, you said I was on with you at some point before. I don't remember that, but you were lovely. And Jack, you did a tremendous job. So
debut hosting the show.
To be on. Yeah, you did excellently, if I say so myself, as someone who's terrible at hosting.
All right, guys, I appreciate it. And as ever, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.